right, how we doing? Oh, nobody's doing well at all. It's terrible. It sucks, man. It's good to be up here with you guys. It's good to be back for week 2. If you're back, that's great. If this is your first time, welcome. If we've not met before, my name is Davis. I'm on staff here at Veritas. And I want to start tonight with a story of, I guess you could call it like a quarter-life crisis that I had. Sophomore year of high school, I'd been playing soccer for a couple years. I was on the JV squad, and I went to tryouts confident that this was going to be the year that I made varsity. Tragically, I did not, but all of my friends did. It was really sad. I was going to be the only guy that was still on the JV team, and rather than stick it out and try again next year and just continue improving, I said, you know what, forget soccer, man. I'm gonna go find a different sport that I can be good at. And so I started racking my brain for all the sports that I could possibly play, and then I remember, I swam on my neighborhood team back when I was 9. And somehow that convinced me that I was qualified to go to my school and to become one of the best swimmers at the school. And so I don't know why that was the goal, but it really was. Like, I was genuinely convinced I could do it. And so I go, I try out, somehow I make it on the team, and then I very quickly realized, these other people are really, really good. They're super fast because they swam when they were 9, but then they kept doing it, and they've done it competitively, and I have no clue what I'm doing. But I was committed, and so for months and months and months, I trained until I finally get to my very first meet. It's the season. It's my first ever, real competition. And you would probably think that I was nervous, but frankly, I was hungry. I was ready to win. I was genuinely convinced that I had gotten good enough that I was gonna go and dominate. And so it's my first ever race. It's a 100 freestyle, which means you have to go down and back twice. And so I'm up on the block, and I hear go, and I just launch into the water. And I am tearing through the water. I'm just going as fast as I possibly can. I'm not even breathing between strokes. And if any of you swam, you know that this is kind of a thing. You can look to the side while you're swimming to look for your competition, and I didn't see anybody. So I'm like, dude, I'm so far ahead of everybody. I turn around, I make my way back, and as I come back to the wall, I realize there are some hands in the water that are slapping the wall. And my first thought is get out of the way, I'm trying to race. But then I'm like, they're encouraging me. This is the way of cheering me on. I've never been to a swim meet, I don't know. I'm like, I'm just so far ahead, they're telling me to keep going. So I flip again, I go back, I finally flip, and I'm coming back to my last, the end of the race, and I'm convinced that I'm about to set a school record. I just have been going as fast as I could possibly go, and I get to the end, and I look up, and I'm entirely alone in the water. There's not a single other person racing with me, because what I had done is a thing called a false start, where I jumped in the water before everybody else, which if you don't know, is an automatic disqualification. I lost the race the second I touched the water. But I swam the entire race by myself. So what happened? Well, what happened was when I was on the block and I heard go, that was actually a teammate just cheering me on, just saying, hey, go Davis. What I was supposed to be listening for was for the ref to blow a whistle. So not even the same thing a little bit. But I think what happened is that I wanted to win so badly. I had hyped this thing up in my head, and I just wanted this to be the thing that finally gave me the applause. I wanted this to be my thing so badly that when I finally heard a voice that told me I could go, I went. So I listened to the wrong voice. And I was convinced that what mattered in that moment was winning. But it turns out what would have helped me way more than any of that was waiting to hear the right voice. Because it was the difference between me getting that applause that I was looking for and just being alone and embarrassed in the water, all by myself. What mattered was hearing the right voice. Do you ever think about the voices that you listen to in your life? Maybe more importantly, do you think about where those voices are leading you in your life? Because that's the idea that we're gonna sit with tonight, is that the voices that we listen to, they really, really matter because they determine where we end up. The voices we listen to, they matter because they determine where we end up. And that's true this summer, that's true this upcoming school year, and that's true in life. And it's not just me saying this, the Bible totally agrees. Tonight we're gonna be in John 10, and we're gonna see that Jesus agrees that the voices we listen to, it really matters because it determines where we end up in life. So we're gonna be in John 10 tonight. If you were here last week, you know that we are in a series called I Am, that is just based on these statements that Jesus made throughout the gospel. And they're called the I Am statements because that's exactly what Jesus did. 7 different times, he says, I am the blank. And then he usually gives a kind of metaphor. And they're usually cryptic, they're a little bit hard to understand, and that's on purpose because he wanted his audience back then, and I think us today, to have to sit with it a little bit, to think about like, what is Jesus saying about himself? What does this metaphor reveal about him? So that's our goal this summer, is to sit and to consider like, who is Jesus? What do these metaphors mean about him? And then maybe more importantly, what does who Jesus is mean for us? What does that mean about who we are and the lives that we're going to live? So Alex, she kicked us off last week with the statement, I am the bread of life. And tonight we're going to look at what I would say is probably one of the more famous statements that Jesus made. It's John 10, verse 11. Really simple, 5 words. I am the good shepherd. Maybe you've heard that before, maybe not, that's okay. But yeah, Jesus is calling himself the good shepherd. And I think it's funny because like when Jesus said, I am the bread of life, I'm sure there were people even back then who were like, dude, what are you talking about? Like you're referring to yourself as bread? And I have the same reaction, but I think this statement is funny because it's actually really clear to their audience. I look at this and I'm like, I don't understand this at all because I don't own any sheep. I don't know any shepherds in real life. Like this is just as metaphorical as the bread thing is to me, but to his original audience, this makes complete sense because they were an agrarian culture, right? Like everybody, either themselves or their family or their friends or probably their neighbors, like everybody owned livestock. That was just what you did. That was how you made money. That was how you had clothing and meat and all of the stuff that you needed. And so everybody, they hear Jesus say, I am the good shepherd, and immediately they know what a shepherd does. They know a shepherd's job is to care for his sheep. It's to guide them. It's to watch over them. It's to protect them and to lead them where they're supposed to go. But it turns out this wasn't just like a common agricultural metaphor in Jesus' day. This was actually used all throughout the Old Testament. This is a super familiar metaphor, a common metaphor that God uses to describe his relationship with his people. If you go and you just look up shepherd in the Bible, you're gonna find a ton of Old Testament passages that are talking about God and his people. One of the more famous ones, Psalm 23:1, goes like this: the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And so catch this, when Jesus says that he is the good shepherd, he's not just using familiar language. He's not just trying to tap into a thing that they would have understood culturally, but he's actually pointing back to all of the times where God refers to himself as a shepherd in the Old Testament. He's pointing to Psalm 23 and he's saying, that's me. I am that very same God. I was the good shepherd back then, I am the good shepherd now, and I always will be the good shepherd. That very same God that created everything and everyone, that very same God that delivered his people out of slavery and brought them to the promised land, that very same God that has shepherded his people through all of life, that's me. I'm standing in front of you. I am that shepherd. And the other reason Jesus is calling himself the shepherd is because he wants to make it really clear what his role is in their life. Jesus calls himself a shepherd because he wants to lead his sheep. It's what shepherds do. So then probably comes the natural question of, well, then who are Jesus' sheep? If it's his job to lead them, then who is that? Well, ultimately, I think it's you. And I think it's me. I think Jesus says that we are his sheep and he wants to lead us. He wants to lead us to the life that we were created for because he is our shepherd. And maybe like me, you hear that Jesus calls himself a shepherd and he says that he wants to lead you, and you push back on that a little bit. I bristle at that a little bit because if I'm like honest, I don't actually love the idea that I need a shepherd. I don't love the idea that there's somebody who wants to guide me. When I hear Jesus start to refer to himself as my shepherd and that he wants to lead me, it starts to sound a little like authoritarian. It starts to sound like Jesus wants to suck all the fun out of my life, and he just wants to give me a bunch of rules to live by. He just wants to tell me what to do and how to live, and I don't get to make any choices anymore. But I think this is where kind of the cultural, disparage is really obvious, because I think back then, they would have heard Jesus refer to himself as a shepherd, and they would have just known intuitively like, oh yeah, sheep really need a shepherd. So I don't think they would have been as offended by it as we are, but I think some of that's lost on us. Like I have the question of like, well, do sheep really need a shepherd? Do I really need somebody to guide me in life? Like, why can't I just do that myself? I have a video here that displays why sheep can't guide themselves, and it's because they're prone to wander, and sometimes they end up in places that are not good for them. So let's go ahead and watch this. Dude, video gets me every single time. Just the way that he perfectly just jumps straight back in, it's so good. But I think it's obvious, right? Like that sheep needed a shepherd. That sheep needed somebody to keep it from going back into the ravine. And I think sometimes when people preach about Jesus being a shepherd and us being sheep, they camp out in this idea that sheep are really dumb. And there's some truth to it. Like sheep are known for being defenseless, and they aren't the smartest animals. Like they wander and they get in trouble. But the point here is not that we're dumb. Because please hear me say this, like that's not how God feels about you. God does not look at you and say, oh, you poor thing, you think you can do this alone, you need me. No, God as a shepherd cares about us. That's why he calls us sheep, is because he wants to guide us. He wants to protect us. He wants to comfort us. He wants to bring us into the life that he has created us for. That's why he calls us his sheep, and why he calls himself our shepherd, is because he knows that we need his guidance. Jesus, he wants us to listen to his voice in our lives because he wants to lead us to the life that we were created for. And like I said at the beginning, what voice we listen to matters because it determines where we end up. And thankfully, Jesus gives us a really clear picture of where he wants to lead us as our shepherd. John 10, verses 10 and 11, he says this. He said, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. So Jesus says that where he wants to lead us as our good shepherd is life. And not just life living, not just life survival, but life abundant. Jesus, our good shepherd, he wants to lead us to green pastures where we have everything that we could possibly need. Our good shepherd wants to lead us by still waters where we don't just have temporary relief, but we have real rest. Jesus wants to lead us to a place that restores our soul. He wants to lead us to a place where our cup overflows, where we don't have want anymore, but where all of our needs are met, where we are fulfilled fully, life abundant. That is what Jesus wants for us, and that's why he wants us to follow him, is because he wants to lead us to that life abundant. But then if you catch at the beginning of that verse, Jesus acknowledges something, that there are different voices, other voices that want to speak into our life. He refers to it as the thief. And he says that the thief comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. And so Jesus, he's not mincing words here. Jesus is acknowledging that we have an enemy. We have another voice in our life that wants to lead us astray, that wants us to stop following the good shepherd. If the good shepherd wants to lead us to life abundant, then this enemy, this thief, he wants to get us to stop following the good shepherd. He wants us to end up anywhere but in that life abundant. And how does he do it? Well, he uses all sorts of voices in our life. Those voices might sound like the voice of comfort. And that voice might sound like the idea that life is meant to be easy. That if something's hard, then you probably shouldn't do it. You should just look for things that are convenient and easy and comfortable for you. But that ultimately, if we follow that voice, I don't know how fast, I don't know if it's immediate, but it's eventually gonna lead us astray from the good shepherd. Because Jesus, he says hard things. He tells us to do uncomfortable things. He tells us that we're gonna walk through dark valleys at times. Jesus, he's not offering us comfort 100% of the time. And so if that's the voice that we're listening to, eventually it's gonna lead us away from the good shepherd. Or maybe for you, it's the voice of success. It's a voice that sounds like, I'm only gonna be happy when I finally get that internship, or that job, or that boyfriend or girlfriend, or that spot on the team. Or maybe the voice of success for you is something like it was for me on that swimming block. It's the voice that says you need to be a winner. You need to earn your spot. You're living for applause. But eventually that voice is gonna lead us away from the good shepherd, because Jesus says that our life, it is best lived with humility. Our life is best lived when we're not living for ourselves, we're living for the sake of others, and when our satisfaction is found in him, not in our own achievements. Or maybe it's the voice of freedom, the idea that you should be able to do whatever you want, whenever you want. Well, Jesus says that our true freedom is actually found in submission to him. Or maybe it's the voice of pleasure, the idea that life is just supposed to feel good. And so if something feels good, well, then it must be good, and you should do it as much and as often as you want. That's ultimately gonna lead us away from the good shepherd, because Jesus says that he created us. He knows what's best for us. And while there are all sorts of things out there that might feel good, there are plenty of things that feel good, but are not actually good for us. They end up leading us into isolation and to harm. They don't actually provide what they're promising. So those voices, they aren't inherently bad, right? Like there's nothing wrong with wanting to enjoy your life and to have some flexibility in what you do and to achieve things. But the voices we listen to, they determine where we end up. And if we follow those voices to their conclusion, eventually they're going to lead us away from the Good Shepherd. And that means that they're going to lead us away from that abundant life that he's offering for us. So then that raises the question for me, which is, how do I actually know that I can trust Jesus' voice? How do I know that Jesus knows any better than these other voices? Because they're tempting, man. Some of those promises, they sound like they are actually going to lead me to my best life. So why would I listen to Jesus instead of them? Well, Jesus gives us, I think, a really compelling reason if we keep going in the verse. He says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. Keeps going. And I lay my life down for the sheep. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have the authority to lay it down and the authority to take it up again. So Jesus, he is saying that part of what makes him the good shepherd is that he's willing to lay his life down for us. Jesus is not just making promises in our life, just talking about this abundant life and then not backing it up. Jesus says, I want to lead you to abundant life. And he wanted to lead you to abundant life so badly that he actually came to earth as a man. And he lived that life and he said, I am the good shepherd so that you will follow me. And then he died on our behalf. And then, as this verse says, he rose again to assure us that those promises, they're real. When Jesus says that he wants to give you abundant life, he means it. And he's willing to back it up by laying his life down for you. What other shepherd, what other voice do you have in your life that's willing to do that? I have a lot of voices in my life that promise a lot, but at the end of the day, they don't back it up. They don't truly care for me enough to lay their life down for me. But if I can just be honest, like this has been a struggle for me, to trust that Jesus' voice really is what's going to lead me to the best life. At times I've said, no, I actually really think that the good life is pleasure, or I think the good life is comfort, or I think the good life is in some relationship, or the good life is in, you name it. Like I have chased all sorts of things, and to be honest, they have always let me down. But the longer I follow Jesus, the more I've realized like when he wants to lead me, he's not just trying to suck the fun out of my life. He's not just trying to take away my freedom. No, Jesus has the right to tell me how I should live because he created me. And he knows what's best for me. And the longer I've followed him, the more I've realized like he's right. These things really do lead to life. And so if that's true, if we can really trust that Jesus' promises are true, that his voice leads us to life abundant, then I think the last question we have to ask tonight is, how do I actually hear Jesus' voice then? If his voice is the one that I'm supposed to follow in my life, if it's the one that is going to lead me to abundant life, then what does it look like to actually hear it better? What does it look like to listen and to respond to it? Because those other voices, they're still speaking. And so there's plenty that we could say here, but two things. First being, I think it's important to just notice the other voices in your life. I think that's obvious, but frankly for me, this is the harder half of things. Because if you're like me, I don't always know what the other voices are, and I don't always know what it is that they're promising me. But the reality is, if I want to learn to hear the shepherd's voice in my life, I have to learn to distinguish it from the other voices, to know what it sounds like and what it doesn't sound like. And so I'm going to read just a couple questions, and maybe you could write these down. You can process them as I read them here, but maybe writing them down and thinking about them throughout your week would be helpful. First question is just, what are the voice that you're listening to in your life? Is it the voice of success? Is it the voice of comfort? Is it the voice of pleasure or of freedom or of romance or of entertainment? And maybe it's not just one of those things, but maybe it's all of them at different times. And so maybe it's helpful to think about it like this. Like, what are the voices that you listen to in times of hardship? What are the voices that you're tempted to listen to when you're anxious? What are the voices that you're tempted to listen to when you're tempted by something that you know isn't good for you, but you really want to do it? What are the voices you're tempted to when you're thinking about your weekend plans? Or what are the voices that you're listening to when you're thinking about your future or who to date? Like, there are all sorts of times where these voices are going to speak and make promises, and it's helpful to just pay attention to them. And then that second question, it's the one we started with tonight. Where are those voices leading you? I think a voice that has spoken a lot to me lately is just this voice of comfort, because just to be honest with you guys, like I think objectively, life is busier for me than it ever has been. Maybe some of you feel that way too, but I'm doing this job. I'm in grad school in St. Louis. I'm at a seminary. I am a husband. I'm a father to a 14-month-old. I have my friends and my parents to keep up with, and I want to be good to all of those people. I try to keep a workout routine, and then I try to have some level of free time to just do things that I enjoy. And frankly, there's just so many times where like, it's just too much. There's just genuinely too much on my plate. And so that voice of comfort, it comes in. It says things like, man, this is a lot. Shouldn't life be easier? Wouldn't it be nice to just wake up tomorrow and not be needed by somebody? Wouldn't it be awesome to just wake up and like play video games all day? There are times when the answer is like, yeah, that would be awesome. I would love that. But then I have to ask that second question. Where are those voices leading me? And to be honest, when I play it out, I realize like those voices, they're leading me away from being a good husband, from being a good father, from being a good coworker, a good friend, a good son. They're leading me away from living a healthy lifestyle. Like if I only ever said yes to things that were convenient and that I wanted to do, I would say no to all of the things that I'm supposed to be doing right now. And I want my life to matter. I want my life to have a purpose. I don't want to just be comfortable all of the time. I want to do hard things because when I realize where they're leading me, I realize I want to be led by the Good Shepherd. And that Good Shepherd is the one who has brought all those things into my life. And so I want to, rather than running away from them and just running towards comfort, I want to run towards him. And I want to depend on him. And I want to trust that he's brought me into those things for a reason and that he's going to help me get through them. So what are those voices for you? And where are they leading you? Second thing would be to spend time listening to your shepherd's voice. And that one might sound obvious, but I think that if we really want to be able to distinguish our shepherd's voice from all of the other voices in our life, well, we have to spend time with him to know what his voice sounds like. I mentioned I have a 14-month-old son. I think I have a picture of him. Yep, that's me and him. His name is Henry. I love that guy more than anything. And when my wife and I go to church here at the Crossing on Sundays, we drop him off in Crossing Kids, and then we come into the service. And he hangs out with all the babies his age, and I think some of you, actually, there are college students that volunteer in that classroom. Thank you for doing that. He's a little bit of a toddler terror right now. But we drop him off, we come to church, and we go back, and we've been doing it enough that like his volunteers know us, they recognize us. So as we start coming back down the hallway, they start calling for him. They say, hey, Henry, your parents are coming. Hey, Henry, it's time to go. And dude's locked in. Like he's playing, he's grinding, he's doing his thing. But then, as my wife and I get closer, and as we start talking, we're not even calling his name. We're just chit-chatting. But he hears our voice, and he recognizes it, and he drops whatever he's doing, and he puts his head up, and he just dashes towards the door so that we can scoop him up and take him home. Why does that happen? Why does my son recognize my voice in that way? It's not just because I'm his dad. Because there's a world in which I'm his dad, but I don't actually spend that much time with him. Or he doesn't spend that much time with me, which I guess at this point he doesn't really have a say, but you get the point. No, he recognizes my voice because I spend every single day with him. I get up with him in the morning and I get him dressed and I feed him breakfast and we play and we read books and then I take him to daycare and then I pick him up from daycare and then I go home and we play and we eat dinner and then we play some more and then we do bath and then I read him a story when he goes to bed and I tell him, hey buddy, I love you and I'll see you in the morning. And then the next morning we get up and we do it all over again every single day. So he knows my voice. And it's not just recognition, it's knowing that I care for him, that I'm the one who loves him and that I'm the one that's going to provide for him. I'm going to protect him and I'm going to be there for him. That when I say things to him, that I mean it, that I'm going to back that up with my presence. It's the very same thing with God. And God loves you and wants to provide for you and can care for you infinitely more so than I can with my son. But if we want to recognize his voice in that way to where we actually respond to it, we have to spend time with him. And there's all sorts of ways that we could do that. And Alex next week is going to talk more about what it means to follow God and what it means to spend time with him. But one really easy way, and this is probably not going to be a surprise that I'm saying this from a stage at a church, but it's just to be in our Bible. Because I think I take for granted what the Bible is. Like it is literally God's word. It is God revealing himself to us. It's him telling us who he is and what he's like and what he cares about and who we are and what we're supposed to be like and what our lives should look like and what we should find our hope in. Like it is everything that we need to have a relationship with him. He has given it to us. And so when we read the Bible, we are literally hearing God's voice speak about himself and speak about us. And so I think some of you are hopefully in good routines where you're in your Bible regularly, and I pray that you have experienced this, where the longer that you have spent time in your Bible, the more that you have come to trust God's voice in your life, where you've come to recognize it and to know that those promises, they really are true, that he means what he says, and he's the type of God who's going to back it up by doing the thing that he promises. But I know others of us, and frankly, this is me a lot of the time, we're not in good rhythms. We want to trust those things. We want to believe God. We want to know his voice more. But the issue is that we just don't know how to actually spend time with him. And so if that's you, as the music team comes back up, I just want to make kind of one suggestion, one way that we could be in our Bible a little bit more over the next week. And that would just be that we commit to learning and reading Psalm 23 together. It's the verse that we referenced earlier, and it was written by a guy named King David. And if you don't know who that is, that's okay. He was one of the kings throughout the Old Testament. He's a pretty big deal, but I think it's interesting because King David is a figure who at times was not faithful, did not spend good time with God, was not close to God. But then there were other times where King David was really close with God, where he spent a lot of time with him. And he writes this psalm, this poem, this song about what it's like when we are following God faithfully, when we are with him, when he is our shepherd and he is the voice that we're following. It sounds like this. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That's the life I want. That's the life that you were created for. And how do we get that? We follow the Good Shepherd. We learn what his voice sounds like in our life, and we follow it. And so maybe for you that just looks like getting up this week, and before you get on your phone, like I'm tempted to do, or before you jump in the shower and go off to whatever you're doing this summer, maybe it just looks like reading that psalm again. Just doing it every morning so that you can remember what your Good Shepherd is promising you, the life that he wants to lead you, what it sounds like. Have it stir up something in your soul that says, man, I want that. That's the voice that I want to follow. And then maybe as you read it, maybe like a stretch goal, an extra challenge, could be to try to memorize it. And if that sounds scary to you, that's okay. Frankly, I don't have very much of the Bible memorized at all. It's really hard for me. But this psalm, it has a nice cadence to it. But I think there's benefit in memorizing it. So that in a moment of temptation, or a moment of having to make a decision, or a moment of anxiety, you hear this psalm. You hear where your Good Shepherd wants to lead you. It's green pastures. It's still waters. It's a restoration of your soul. It's rest, and it is a cup overflowing. You see, the voices that we listen to in our life, they matter because they determine where we end up. And I want to end up in life abundant, in the house of the Lord forever with my Good Shepherd. And that's what I want for you too. So let's be people who learn the voice of our Good Shepherd and who follow him. Amen.